Hello, welcome back to the channel. Have you ever wondered why this game is so difficult? Well, I think today might actually shed a bit of light on it. Today we're talking about what the golf club does to the golfer instead of what the golfer's doing to the golf club, and to a certain extent what you might well have to change in order to react to the forces that the golf club is applying to you. Hello. First of all, a big thank you to Ted Blakey. Ted wrote to me on the channel and made me aware of some forces which I hadn't really looked at in detail enough. And they are the forces that the golf club is applying to the golfer. We all think about what we're doing with the golf club, how we're going to get power onto that golf ball, but rarely do we actually think about what the golf club's doing to us. And he made me aware of research that's been done in Sweden about exactly this. And that has given me some food for thought, to say the least. And what I'm going to do today is try and present this to you so that you understand how your arms and hands are going to actually have to resist the forces that the club is applying to you. So for all of you guys here who don't like a good story and would rather just like, what do I have to do, John? Then I'm going to leave a number up here which will show you how far you've got to wind forward just to find out what are the new drills that I'd like you to do with your arms and hands in order to actually counteract the forces which are working on you from the golf club. For everybody else who likes a good story, then get a beer, sit on a couch and eyes and ears open, because this is really good stuff. And I think this explains an awful lot of the problems that a lot of us have, not just the amateurs, also the professionals, when we're swinging a golf club, because we're simply not aware of some of the forces which are working on our body during a golf swing. And it all starts at the very beginning, and it starts with three forces which I want to make you aware of. The first one is what we call droop. That means that when you swing a golf club, the forces of gravity and others are going to cause the shaft to bend down, pulling the club head towards the ground. Flex is another one which you probably all know about and to a certain extent understand. You will have a trail flex, is the flex that we think we're all working with. We're bending the club back and pulling it through, and then it's pinging out and hitting the golf ball. And then there's another flex we call lead flex. This is when the golf club is bending towards the target, moving in this direction, and the bow of the club is moving in that direction. The first time I saw that, I thought it was the camera which was actually mucking up, and to a certain extent it probably was, because it had the wrong kind of shutter. But this is actually happening in a golf swing. And then of course you've got centrifugal force, which is trying to pull the club out of your hands, away from you. And these three forces, combined with torsional forces, which we're not really going to talk too much about today, are the forces that you're going to have to resist and work against in your golf swing, and to a certain extent understand as well, so that you can understand what your hands are actually doing. What I also want to talk about is the axis of the golf club. In the past, I've talked to you about this kind of push-pull feeling that you're going to have with your hands. The left hand pushing back, the right hand pushing forward, as if the axis is exactly between your hands. This axis is actually going to move up and down the golf club during the swing, depending on where you are. It will start between your hands, and if you think about the backswing at the moment where you hinge your wrists, it is exactly in the middle of the hands. And as the right hand pulls up and back, going into that waiter position, and the left hand pushes down and out, almost as if the ball of the hand is pushing towards the ground, that is moving the golf club up. And with it, the axis. So the axis of the swing almost moves up the shaft. And as we get towards the top of the shaft, you can imagine that the shaft will start to bend in this direction, in the direction that the weight and the mass of the club head is moving. And instead of there being the usual droop in the shaft in this direction, so down, you've got a droop in the shaft going in this direction. And this is kind of this pressure that I think we all imagine creating at the top of our golf swing and moving down into the golf ball. In truth as well, this is where it usually goes pear-shaped for the majority of golfers, because they wait until everything gets to the top of the swing, the shaft has no flex, and then they start down. If you start down then with your hands, by pressing with your hands, the axis will move back down into your hands, and you will get this so-called casting of the golf club at the top. This is not what I would call an early release, although obviously you're releasing the club too early. I'd call that more of a cast. The early release is coming in a moment. So once I actually get my hands to around about shoulder height, what we call the waiter position, my shoulders and my body has usually stopped turning. And despite the club's inertia and forces pulling on the arms, I'm going to start my downswing by going into this move, or this kind of bar stool position, which is turning my body back, stopping the arms from moving back any further and applying an even greater force to the golf club. So you can imagine at the top of the swing, the club is trying to move in this direction, my hands are trying to move in the opposite direction, and the club is going to flex. And at that point, if you can imagine the center of the club being the axis, then obviously if the head end is trying to move in this direction, then the grip end is trying to move in the opposite direction. And this is why you've got to have the feeling that the hands are going to resist that movement and pull the club towards yourself and down. And that's not just going to be the job of the left hand, the right arm and hand is going to help that. So the feeling is kind of pushing down with the hands when the club is pulling up. And as that is combined with this rotational movement that the body is making, you are creating even greater forces on the golf club. This pulling and pushing movement of the arms down is really the point which is creating the greatest acceleration in the arms and hands. And in truth, the hands reach their quickest point around about here. As of this point, they start to decelerate, almost as if we were coming down the straight here and then turning the corner into the golf ball. And because we're coming into that corner, your hands are actually going to be decelerating. Now, this is where the fun begins, because at the moment the hands decelerate, the club head changes its direction. Instead of working away from the ground, it starts working towards the ground. Now, if you can imagine at this point, this is the shaft, and the shaft was doing this, it now starts doing this. And that is pushing the end of the club up. And that's something you've got to resist, because that's where the early release is coming from. If you've been taught to turn your body, swing with your body, and keep your arms passive, at this moment, the club is going to do that, and it's going to release. And that's what's causing your early release. So it's the deceleration of the arms and hands here which changes the flex in the shaft from a trail flex to a lead flex and causes the grip end to be pushed up. And at this point, your hands have got to react and push down. So as we get to this point, although they're decelerating, the work of the arm and hand is increasing. At the same time, the club is trying also to bow down, this droop effect. So before we had a negative droop, now we've got a positive droop, whichever way around you want to put it. The toe is trying to get to the ground, so the club head or the grip end is trying to go up in the air. You're gonna have to push it down. You cannot allow it to come up, because as you can see, if I get to that position and the club is trying to do that with my hands, my body is probably going to follow. and this is what we call the early extension. So by getting pressure on the arms and hands down into the ground, especially the ball of the left hand, the heel of the left hand, pressing into the ground, the right hand on top of the club, pressing into the ground, which will also help you to close up this face, get it square. That is resisting the force of the golf club, which is trying to push the grip end up and in this direction. So it's basically going this direction and this direction. And my hands have got to resist that. As we turn the corner, the fight goes on. The club is still bent lead way towards the ball. And the grip end is being pressed. Now, if you can think again of the axis here, grip end trying to move away from the target, club head trying to move towards the target. Strangely enough, by pressing your hands forward, keeping the hip rotation, the shoulder rotation going, you are stopping the club head from releasing completely. And as you get just towards the ball, the hands are changing direction and going away from the golf ball. This is when the axis slides back up the shaft as the pressure that you're applying to the club changes. It's almost as if you're pulling the club away from the target, and the pressure you're applying with your right hand is actually helping the club to release and accelerating it through the golf ball. It's a doozy, isn't it? I hope you understood that. So what is it we've got to actually be doing with our arms and hands against these forces? Well, the very first thing is to understand that both hands are helping the club up in the air to start off with. The right hand and elbow hinging back and up, and the heel of your left hand pressing down to get the thing up. Once it actually gets up there, you have to change direction early. If you wait for the club to get to the top, then it's probably just going to bounce back down and release the angle at the top. You're going to get this early release. Any pressure from your hands at that point is not going to help your golf swing. However, once you've changed direction and applied force to the golf club, you've got to work with your hands to get the golf club down. You can't allow the forces of the golf club to work on your hands because it's going to press them up and away and release the club at that time. And obviously the rotation of your hips and your shoulders are going to help your arms to do this. But it basically blows away the idea that your arms and hands can be passive at this stage in a golf swing. They have to be working against the forces that the golf club is creating. As you get to this position and turn the corner, it's all about keeping force on the golf club. Now, it's difficult to separate the jobs that each hand is doing, but if I kind of reach inside me and feel, I have the feel really of the left hand pulling and pushing down, as if the heel of the hand is pushing towards the ground and I'm pulling the golf club at basically right angles to the direction that the club head is moving. So if the club is moving in this direction, actually the club head is moving out and I'm pulling in this direction. As I come further down, the golf club is moving in this direction, I'm pulling in this direction. As I turn further round to impact, the golf club is pulling in this direction. You can understand then the centrifugal forces. I'm pulling in this direction. And so the feeling for the left arm is kind of pulling down and around in that direction. Down and around. At the same time, it is resisting the grip end wanting to come up. So I'm pressing down, not only pulling around, but pressing down and pulling around. So the left hand is pressing and pulling. The right arm is pressing. First of all, it's the feeling of the right elbow kind of wanting to straighten, the right hand and particularly the forefinger, middle finger and ring finger. If you can imagine basically there at the bottom of the fingers, below the finger joint, are pressing into the shaft and basically pressing around the shaft plane. If you can imagine one of these kind of rings on the driving range, that you see all the time, as if I was pressing around that. So here I'm pressing down, here I'm pressing forward, and here I'm pressing up and to the left. Now that explains a lot of the kind of feelings that I was telling you about when I'm hitting an iron, or whether I'm hitting a wood, a driver in the upswing. Will depend on the kind of feelings and the forces that I feel my hand applying to the golf ball. I hit down on the bum, I hit from the back of the bum, or I hit up on the bum. But the same kind of feeling of pressure against the golf club the whole time to resist this force, this lead flex that the golf club has actually gone into, trying to push my hands away from the target. When we combine these forces from the hands, I've got this feeling of kind of pushing the arms down and forward like this. So it's there and there. And these two movements are going on at the same time. They are equal and opposite to the force I'm getting from the golf club. And I think this is probably where it all breaks down in our timing sometimes. If we don't react at the right time to the forces that the club is applying to us, it's going to make quite large changes in the plane of the shaft, in the angle of the club face, in the attack and everything else. And this could well be one of the problems and the reasons that we see such a change in our striking ability from day to day and ball to ball and round to round, that we really are fighting at a speed of milliseconds with the golf club, and sometimes our body gets it right and sometimes it simply doesn't. But knowing what the arms and hands have to do during the golf swing, I hope is going to help you to actually get this pressure applied to the club, because I think in some cases you are actively trying not to do that. You're trying to keep your hands too passive, just let them fall out of the sky, and that's unfortunately not going to work, because the golf club is going to just basically have a field day with them. What does that mean then when we get to the drills that we want to do? Well, I'm going to be working on some drills in the next couple of weeks, and I'll bring them to you. What you first of all want to get is a bit of an old one, the feeling of kind of pulling here on a chain to start the downswing. That's going to happen, but it's not starting the downswing. It's happening after you've changed direction, once you have pressure on the club. If you get to the top of the golf swing and pull on a chain, then you might as well be on the toilet. On the other hand, if you've actually applied pressure to the club, you're going to need this force to stop the club going in this direction and to get the club down. You also can have the feeling of pushing away from your body with the right hand, this movement, in order to counteract the force which is going in this direction. Again, if you think of the axis here, it's going here. I'm pushing in this direction away from the body. So that's pulling down, that's pushing out. As I get into the turn and the centrifugal forces and the droops start occurring, I'm going to have to hold the club down. So the right hand is pressing down on the plane, the left hand is pulling down on the plane, and the heel of the hand is pushing and holding the club and the grip end low through impact. And as we come round the corner, I'm pulling back with the left hand away from the ball in order to counteract the centrifugal forces. I'm holding the heel down on the arm in order to counteract the upward forces, and I'm pressing forward with the hand. And because of this kind of real slowdown in the hand and change in direction, this is when the release is taking place, and this is what you're seeing in all good swings. If we put it all together, it should look something like this. It's just a great game, isn't it? It's never ever stops amazing me. I've been doing this for so many years and I'm still learning. And if I'm learning, it means you're learning. And I think the great thing with YouTube today is that we can learn together. I hope this helps you. If it does, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do so. I'm going to leave a revised version of my philosophy up here, which has got all this good stuff in it. If you want to download it, it's just 99 cents. I apologize if it wasn't in there before, but guys, for 99 cents, come on, hit the button again. Download it, it helps the channel. The little notification bell will let you know when the next video is posted. I wish you all a very interesting week. We'll see you very shortly. Bye-bye now.